Welcome everyone to the L7C podcast NBA edition. Today we are going to be talking about the in-season NBA tournament that just concluded. We're going to be looking in the East and West since we're 20 games in. We're already going to talk about the Christmas games, give our thoughts on that, and give you a Cavs update. So we have the NBA aficionado with us, Mr. Evan Debo. How are you doing today, sir?
Happy holidays, Martin. Hope everything's going well with you and yours, and I'm doing good. How are you?
I am doing well. I'm doing well. Happy holidays to you as well. We are already in that season with the holidays, especially after Thanksgiving and then the March to Christmas and New Year's, which with you, especially, then you throw your birthday in between that Christmas and New Year's because you're a Christmas Eve guy.
It's busy. Yeah, it's busy. Another trip around the sun coming up. So Father Time's undefeated, as we know, for everybody except for LeBron James, of course, who I believe turns. He turns 39 later this month.
Yes. Yeah. So then speaking of LeBron, and looks like he just keeps getting younger or whatever. The in-season tournament, the very first one just ended and perfectly scripted as we were talking about him. LeBron won MVP of the in-season tournament. The Lakers defeated the Pacers Saturday night, day of recording, 123 to 109. Anthony Davis just had one of those games that make you wonder why he's not a top five player in the world. He had the 41 points and 20 rebounds, five blocks. Like, Evan, what did you think of the finals, of the in-season tournament finals? And what did you think of the tournament as a whole?
Yeah, so I'm going to try to compartmentalize a little
Hmm.
bit because there's different pieces to it. I obviously familiar with the soccer format that this was kind of developed in the same, we'll call it the same incubator, more or less, right? So you've got your different groups. You win your group, you advance on to different stages. Then you go into knockout rounds, and it matriculated up to Lakers versus Pacers. So I think coming in, it was one of those things where, again, it was so brand new. I think for a lot of people, seeing how much money and salary cap is allocated to players, especially higher end players or all stars, is the ultimate end goal of winning an additional $500,000, 200,000 to the runner up, and then 100,000 if you made the semifinals. Is that going to be enough for folks to want to buy in who already make so much? With that being said, I think it was a huge success. I think it's got people talking about basketball, during peak football season as well, and how things timed up, like the end of the college football slate that really ended last weekend. What else were you doing this weekend when the hole in the calendar was? You had the Heisman Trophy presentation. You obviously had NFL football on today as well, but you were watching those semifinal games late week last week, and then Saturday night. I mean, it kind of felt like where the All-Star game should be, kind of thing, on the format. So I know we're going to dive into a lot of different things on the tournament itself. Obviously that ended in an incredible game by the Lakers. I mean, who dispatched the Pelicans prior to this to get to this point. Anthony Davis, as you said, I mean, just a monster performance. And again, it's boom or bust with Anthony and his career, particularly around injuries. It just, what we saw last night was just, I mean, insane. Indiana had no answer. It was aggressive out the get go. Just altering shots in the paint. He still had his jumper has fallen off considerably since the bubble. That's something that's talked about in NBA circles a lot. But I mean, he was inherently on last night. Highly efficient, 16 and 24 from the field, gobbling up offensive rebounds. He had five of those. Again, just distributing the ball as well, and great contributions across the Lakers bench and starters. Cam Reddish was a game high 24, doing the dirty work, being an incredible defensive asset to or a game plan that was really orchestrated around trying to stop, Tyrese Halliburton of the Pacers, who he was held to a little bit under what his usual is, 20 points on 14 shots, still just shot 11 assists. But again, it was a matter of who's got the stars and who doesn't in this. And I think the atmosphere, I liked the crossover sets. I like Charles Barkley going back and forth with Stephen A. In the lead up to it, it felt fun. It felt, something that was sorely needed this time of the year. You add in, people have got different ideas on, the weird courts, and some of them are really weird, right, Martin? Where, you've got some more traditional ones, like the Cavs had a more traditional one, but some of these ones where you got all blue courts or all red courts with the streak and the NBA Cup in it and stuff. But I think Adam Silver said it best, and I think that was truly their intent behind doing that was, if you're walking through an airport and you've got, or you're at a sports bar or something and you see the screens of all the different games you can think of, you stop and say, that's a little different there when you see an entire basketball court that looks like the Boise State football field. Again, it catches your eye in a way that I think, in this new era of, hey, we've got so many things reaching for our attention span, then our interest, our rooting interests, our betting interests, all those types of things that, I think it was a success. What were your thoughts, Martin, before we get into maybe some suggestions or tweaks you'd like to see? What did you think of the tournament structure, how it went overall? Do you think there was buy-in?
So to go on one of the first things you said, I do think this weekend of the recording, the 9th and 10th of December, I think that was the best weekend, that Saturday, to have the finals, like you said, because besides the Heisman presentation, college football wise, and obviously got to pay them respect, Army, Navy, there is no other football on the night. The Saturday, yeah, so after conference champions. So I think that Saturday was really good because you're not competing with Saturday night college football on ABC or ESPN or Fox. So you should be one of the highest rated things on, and I think that's obviously what they wanted to go for. I think for the people who think sports are scripted, the NBA couldn't ask for a better first champion of the tournament besides the Lakers. Like that's very good from a marketing thing for for the NBA, because obviously the Lakers have a huge fan base and they have a celebrity fan base who only pay attention to the Lakers when they're good. So you got to have celebrities at the game talking about the in-season tournament. So I think from a marketing that helped them. I don't know. I don't know if I'll be able to say if it was a success or not, because I do agree that people were talking about it, but I know the NBA only cares about like their numbers. Like, were these games more viewed than other games, or are these games going to be close to like Christmas Day numbers, All-Star game numbers? So that's something that we're going to have to wait to see, because from a casual fan, and I mean, in our group message and ourselves, our own friends were asking us, is like, so are these extra games? Like, is this still the 82 games? And we had to explain, they're like, oh no, there's still the 82 games. It's just the way that they're structuring it. So, but I do think it did get some interest. The courts, I mean, I was watching some of the games with my own in-laws, and they were just like, why is the Pacers court blue? Like, this is hard on the eyes. And that's something you're going to have to adjust for like really casual fans.
Yeah, Martin, quick hit on some of those numbers you talked about. So this is from a CNN article kind of
Hmm.
recapping, for the 22-23 season, numbers had dropped for regular season in the NBA Finals overall, which suffered a 6% dip comparative to 2022. But for the group stage in season tournament, an average of 1.5 million viewers, which represent a 26% increase in games watched compared to November of last year. So local television saw a 20% rise in viewership, and watch time on League Pass is up 25% as well, comparing things to November of 22. So, I think you got to be excited about that if you're Adam Silver.
My only thing with the League Pass subscription and all of those numbers is how much of that was the in-season tournament compared to how much is that it was a lot of states' first full year of being able to bet legally on these games. Because Ohio, we weren't able to bet on a full regular season. This is our first time being able to. So I'm just also thinking of like how much does betting have to put to play in that?
No, I think it's an important variable to consider that, the article wasn't, from my quick skimming, it's possible it was later down, didn't really speak to, but I would say, I think that's absolutely a piece of increased viewership as people have a higher stake in the day-to-day stuff. If there's a financial amount tied to whatever they are investing or losing, however you look at it. So Martin, would
Mhm.
you keep the games, or would you keep the groups as they are? Would you expand teams, or expand like groups, like maybe take like a team off of like each group to make a different group? That way you got like first round buys, you can get another wild card. Would you play more games? Would you do them? These are some of the things being discussed out in the ether. Would you do the games in succession as opposed to like, okay, well, it's Tuesday, Thursday kind of combination, or Tuesday, Friday, or whatever, with ESPN and TNT agreements spread over 4 weeks? And you've got kind of these games maybe we don't care about so much in between. So, what are your thoughts there?
One of the things I would like to change, I don't need to fully look into it, was some of the tie-breaking rule type things. I remember Jaylen Brown talking about it weeks ago about like if it that he didn't like the tiebreaker situations and stuff like that because it involved points and that's never been done in the NBA, which he's right. So I'd want to look into that, but some of the courts I felt like we were just going way too much and it was fun like seeing other media sites make their own courts. People don't know NBA now has a partnership with HBO Max, so HBO Max was making NBA courts out of their stuff like Barbie and all that jazz, but I, I don't know about expanding as the first year, like the games and whatnot. And I really like when the championship is this Saturday, if they can keep this Saturday. But I would have to really think about like expanding and stuff like that. But I would want to look into the tiebreakers first. How about you?
I think it's important to start there. I think some of this stuff would be settled on the tiebreakers though if you had some more games. So putting on my Cavs hat, so the Cavs, played 4 games in their East Group A. They went 3-1. They lost to the Pacers. And then based on how the wild card situation went, they didn't beat teams by enough points to even matter. So it didn't matter that they went 3-1 in their pool. Pacers went undefeated, so they got the automatic bid from East A. And then, I mean, you had that weird scenario. It was kind of fun, but there are other points where I just don't know that you get that. So you recall that back to Jaylen Brown's conversation, Boston playing Chicago. Boston's up a jillion, and you got Joe Mazzulla, talking to the Chicago coaching staff and Billy Donovan about like, hey man, like I got a guy over here. He's telling me, how much we got to win by if we're going to sneak in and all
Hmm.
that. And you've got your starters in. Just, I mean, for the Cavs piece, they were so far behind. They won by a lot against Atlanta in their last game, but I mean, you had all your starters in, and Donnie's just chucking threes, trying to do everything he can to inflate that even more. It hurts the sportsmanship of the game a little bit. There are a part of me of just like, hey, it is fun. It's almost like 2K, yeah, where you get to leave all your cool players in, for the rest of the game that you don't normally see in a blowout. But part of me would think some of those tiebreaker things would potentially be settled if you just played more games. And then again, you don't have teams go 3-1 and not, what I mean, like that much above 500 in a 4 game set. I mean, like take it to 7 games, take it to 8 games, something like that. You might be able to start a little bit earlier, or you could do like a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday alternating piece. Obviously, you're not doing 4 games in 5 nights, but just increase it a little bit. I think. I think there's still some wiggle room, but that's my first thought.
Yeah, it'll be just interesting because then it's like, do you go so far to make, so let's see, OSU Michigan's usually the last week of right at Thanksgiving? Like, do you expand it to, all right, now we're gonna do 3 weeks or 4 weeks? Do we do a whole month of the NBA in season like tournament where the whole month is tournament games and then we get to the same championship?
Yeah, I think there is something to be said about doing them successively. The breakup, I think, was a little tough. I mean, there's some good and bad about, hey, if you got a guy who's injured, you potentially aren't immediately like eliminated if he's a key cog in your rotation. If you know that, hey, I just got to get him a spell until next Friday's tournament games. Like there's been a lot of early season injuries too. So I mean, it was interesting. I mean, I definitely enjoyed it overall. As anything, people are gonna have their feedback. They're gonna chime in. They're gonna suggest tweak this, change this, add this, subtract that. But I mean, I think this was interesting. And again, got LeBron, who's the first ever to hoist this up. We kind of joked last night, right, about AD and LeBron really love those neutral game sites for
Yeah,
champions.
you couldn't actually script it any better if we're just being completely
Yeah,
honest.
so I mean, Adam Silver probably should give another $500,000 at least to his guy LeBron for pulling it off, and I mean, he's still looking mighty impressive out there, man. I mean, he's got to pace himself a little bit. I know the Lakers aren't happy with how much he's playing right now, but Austin Reeves is doing well on the bench. D'Angelo Russell's had a little bit of a resurgence, has been really good too, and then just some of the length, Torian Prince and Cam Reddish have been really good as well. So it was a great run. I enjoyed Saturday night.
Yeah, I think it did highlight a lot of different teams for people who don't have league pass because then you're able to see some other teams on national TV, which I've always been a proponent of. So I there it was good. It was good. I'm just concerned about when you get to a point, maybe not this year or next year, a couple years down the line where we get to the same conversations like are we really going to play this hard for $500,000 and have our starters going out here when our goal is to hoist a championship in June?
Yeah, we'll see. Martin, in terms of what else we've seen so far, about 20 some games or so in, let's take a quick peek on the standings here. So let's start west. Looking at things, you've got the Timberwolves and Thunder at the top. Timberwolves kind of running away with things so far. I believe that's an NBA best record.
Yeah. Hmm.
17, yep, 17 and 4, 12 and 2 in the conference, 10 and 1 at home. First team to 10 win. Well, I can't say the first team. Lakers have 10 wins at home too, but best home record in the West. And looking at the East, only the Celtics they played one less game and they're undefeated on their home court. But so on the West side of things, I think the Lakers' strong play has been good. I've been a little down on the Suns trio thing.
Well,
Really hasn't come to fruition. It's almost
really,
like,
really quick, Evan.
yeah, go
Just
ahead.
want to throw with the Laker thing. It's interesting because they're 14-9 right now. And like we said, the in-season tournament, all this stuff count. They're 7-0 when it came to in-season tournament games. If it wasn't an in-season tournament game, you take those 7 games out. Like that's just the interesting part of the Lakers.
I think it's an interesting part of the system too, right?
Hmm.
That like, is LeBron going to try as much and care so much to carry them to now? Granted, one of those wins doesn't count. The championship game doesn't count against a record. Technically, they're 15-9, but
Yeah.
for the 6 other ones, is it guaranteed that they're going to win all six and they're going to carry this early on, or there's not going to be a faint. Oh, LeBron's ankle's a little sore, and we're being cautious with it, so we're going to sit him out. Or same thing with AD. So I mean, they could be worse in the standings based on that. I mean, they definitely, obviously they wanted, they cared the most about this tournament. LeBron cared the most about this tournament. I think there were tons of other teams that there are a few that I don't think cared as much. I think going into year two, I think you'll see a little bit change in the tune just in terms of who they rolled out there, how much they gave, all those things. But looking at the rest of the West, the Kings sliding a little bit, surprising to me. Again, back to the Suns. I think Brad Beal, I got a notification this evening that he's on the mend, should be back soon. But We really haven't seen those three again with the filler parts around them fully yet. So that's a surprise. The Rockets, at 10-9 as well too, with Ime Udoka, and you bring in some vets, Fred VanVleet. You bring in a couple other solid bets, Jeff Green. That's kind of rounding out the roster with all those young pups and draft picks they have. Şengün is so impressive to watch every night. I mean, that dude's a walking like 15, 6, and 6 minimum. He's kind of like a baby Joker. I mean, he's really been huge so far for them. So you got the Clippers doing continuous Clipper things. You've got back to your bottom dwellers, your Spurs. Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't pulled off a couple more wins than that. Trailblazers has been a little frisky of late. Obviously the Grizz, so they've got 21 games under their belt, 4 left, and they get job back. But I mean, they're 9 games under 500 right now, Martin. That's tough. I mean, there's that famous clip of Marcus Smart chewing out his bench for just not caring and the poor effort. I didn't see them not be. Obviously, they lost Steven Adams too. I didn't see them being a real bottom dweller in the West. But where I want to spend the majority of our time on are 2 teams sitting at 10 and 11. So the Warriors sliding. Obviously had the Draymond suspension and the crazy UFC tackle and chokehold. And, I was really surprised that was only 5 games. But, I mean, Clay continues to be a shell of himself. And, again, just the team around them, too. I think Chris Paul's being asked to do a lot still at his age. They've obviously got to make some moves going because, I mean, Curry can only do so much, but they're 2 games under 500. And then in 10, Martin, the talk of the tournament is Zion Williamson and his weight.
Yeah,
I know you've got thoughts. I'm going to let you roll. I can even, just knowing you, I agree with all of them.
yeah, I'm not gonna. Oh, okay. I'm not gonna harp too much on it, but we because we didn't dive into the full details. We just told you guys to look it up. Obviously, Zion was already a talk of the town before the season started because of his personal life and things going on there that went all across the internet. But I think the problem for me with weight, and obviously on a more serious note, I know everyone has issues with weight, things like that, but the fact that LeBron is what 15
Yes.
years older
Yes.
than
Say it louder
Zion,
for those in the back.
and you couldn't like if you didn't if you didn't know who any of these people are, you would think LeBron was the young 20-year-old and Zion was the 40-year-old who was just trying to get some rec at the Cap Center at the YMCA. Like that's what you would think Zion was. And there's nothing wrong with if you're doing that at the rec, but in the NBA, no. That especially as a 21-year-old and as explosive as he is, I don't think he's taking it seriously enough. And no one's asking you to spend $1 million on your body. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. That's the Brady, LeBron, Russell. That's fine. But just normal taking care of yourself, especially since your game emphasis is your explosiveness, and you're not going to be able to get off the ground if you're bigger. It's just the way it is. Like he needs to get that under control because everyone knows if you watch basketball, you know the thing of Zion bringing the ball up, and they have like the sideline video of him, and it just looks terrible, man. It's so bad, and I always think if this team is fully healthy and they could cause some real problems in the West, but Zion is the missing thing, and he's gonna ask, is this contract up this year or next year?
Oh,
Or
they
do you,
ex- they extended him
oh,
full
they already extended him.
last
So
year. It was not this past off season, but I think it was summer 22.
yeah, and like as an owner, is like this will be extended for, and now he's doing that. But yeah, it was terrible, man. It was just so bad.
His minutes are down a little bit. He's only he's only like 3 minutes above his rookie year numbers. He is only in 4 seasons. He's only played 30 games or more once. obviously he's played in all 19 so far this year, but 29 last year, 61 was the big year, 2020, 2021, and then 1920 played 24 games. But yeah, I mean his 3 point stuff is down, his rebounds are down, his assists are actually up a tick, not a lot, 4.8 to 4.6. But I mean, there's so many other pieces on his team. But Brandon Ingram is obviously the better bet every night. McCollum's had the collapsed lung again. I mean, that's really scary. Worried for that guy. He's returned to the court, but they've drafted well. They've got some good young guys out there. But it's just when you see that side profile stuff, man, is just. I mean, there was some talk about his maybe like it was alleged like a former trainer came through and was just kind of vague of like, yeah, not surprised. If you're not going to buy in, and it doesn't look like he's being bought in, there was allegations that there was some contractual pieces tied to his weight and his conditioning, BMI, all those types of things. I mean, who knows what's real and what's not? But so far, not looking great for a max player.
No, and then you're just sitting there as an owner, I mean, a GM, teammates, and it's like we're all putting our all into this, and he is not. And what are you going to do about that? Because if in this day and era, if you piss off a star player, they'll just be like, I want out.
Deuces them out.
And then on the Warriors side, because you did bring up the
Yep.
Warriors, I would say because they're currently the 11th seed, and now we're in this day and era. And the same thing with the Grizzlies. It's like, honestly, you just got to get to the 10th. You got to get the 7 and 10, and you can get in this play in since we have to play in. Like, if this was like the old school days where it was no play in, then I would say these teams are on more trouble. But with the play in, they just got to keep their head above water. But like you said, I don't know who they're going to trade for. My biggest disappointment has been Klay Thompson. Like, you're supposed to be the second running man. Like, you have already these nicknames, Game Six Clay, all of that, but you have not been performing to the level that we all are accustomed to seeing you play the past decade. And I know he was mad that he wasn't on the 75 team and all of that, but you're watching him play now. It's like, well, did you deserve to be on the top 75? So he's my biggest disappointment on that team.
He still thinks he's getting not a max or a high end deal. I think. I mean, there's no way you can give him that.
No,
I mean, there's no
no.
way you can't pay for past performance at the detriment of where reality is right now at this player at this age with those surgeries and where he's at. I mean, you can be appreciative and you paid him, at the time with what you had, how you could, but you just can't move on that way. So, Martin, any other comments, West? If not, we shift east.
Biggest, you already talked about the Rockets. My other one would be, I mean, obviously I love the Thunder because I love SGA,
Oh, they're
but
so fun to watch.
man, Dallas, Luca and Kyrie, now that they've had an off season, they're meshing, man. They're doing some things in Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, they've certainly been impressive. I mean, it's been interesting to check in to see. I mean, you'll have your full locomotive Luca games where he's just absolutely teeing off. Shout out Luca, new dad in the world. But again, it was still the wrong move. We talked at length in previous
Hmm.
pods about tanking for that number 10 pick. And I mean, so far, Derek Lively's been a really good piece for them. Just from a rookie, 6'11", 7-footer standpoint, he's been running rim. He's been adding some length defensively, and I mean, he's been really good. Where you didn't have to go out to the market and pay market value for a starting center if you could even find one. So Mavs dodged a serious issue with Kyrie Irving, injury wise. I think he's nursing it a little bit, but had Dwight Powell fall on him and tangle up in lower extremities that I can't remember if it was an ankle or some kind of calf issue, but it was scary there for a little bit. But he's been cleared that he's out of the clear for some crazy stuff for now. But yes, impressive. Glad you brought them up.
Yeah, well, yeah. Let's shift out east.
So our usual folks at the top, with the exception,
I was
Martin,
gonna say I don't
of
know
the
about usual.
Orlando Magic wedged in between our two usuals at the top, the Bucks and Celtics. Yeah, I want to spend some time on the Magic. So I've watched them at length the other day. Cavs have played them a couple times, I think, so far this year. They'll play them again tomorrow night in Orlando. Paolo dropped a 40 piece on the Cavs the other night. And, Cavs were able to beat them, but I think about they're just a long team. You've got the Wagner brothers. They've got some Gary Harris is still giving some good solid rotation bench minutes coming up. Cole Anthony, they've pushed to the bench, but he's coming in. I mean, he's good for 10, 12, and 4 assists a game. I've really liked what I've seen out of Paulo so far. I like their playing style. Um, they've kind of really modeled themselves with that length, kind of like how the Cavs have, with their lengthy front court. Bataze's he doesn't play a whole lot. He starts for him, but at the center position, but he's a lengthy guy that can step out and hit an occasional probably 25 to 30% three stretch the court. But they've got some young rookies in there too that are mixing things up. I mean, they've been very, very frisky lately. I mean, it's been good to see a resurgence of the Magic a little bit.
Yeah, I agree, and especially with Pablo and Franz Wagner. I mean, currently both of them are literally the same exact points per game, 20.7, which having two 20-point scorers is always a great thing in the NBA. And it's a team that no one expected anything of, which is always good to see. I know that goes into a lot of the NFL's popularity that you can go from first to last or last to first, depending on a couple good signings and some off-season stuff. You really don't see that in the NBA. Usually, like you said, the usual suspects are the usual suspects. If you have one superstar, two superstars, you're going to be near the top. But the Magic, I mean, currently have no superstars. They just got some players evolving, and they're the number two seed in the Eastern Conference. Only a game? Is it a game back of yeah, no, a game and a half back of Boston. So it's a really good story to have the Magic back from like you were talking about with us. I mean, remember the T-Mac and T-Mac Magic. Obviously, remember like Shaq and Penny's Magic, Dwight Howard's Magic. So seeing them back in the fold is a good thing, and it's a new refresh thing for the NBA because then you get those fans watching games.
Martin, can I give you my Magic conspiracy theory
Oh,
that
sure,
I've not heard anywhere else?
sure.
All right. So there's a disparity between these two players playing in terms of minutes. It's pretty substantial.
Hmm.
I believe if you swap minutes, you would absolutely see at par production, if not better production. And what I'm lobbying for is I think Mo Wagner is the better Wagner brother.
Really?
So Mo plays about 19.4 minutes a game. Franz
Mhm.
plays every bit of 33. You've got a point scoring difference of Franz is at 20 a game. Mo is at 12 and a half a game. But again, he's not getting 14 extra minutes a game. You look at the rebounding. He's rebounding his brother a rebound less and 14 minutes less. From an assist side of things, Franz is distributing 2 assists more a game, but not too gross to think that hey, maybe with 14 extra minutes they could do something. They're blocking about the same percentage, turn the ball over same like 1.5 ish per game. Mo is. I mean, you're just splitting hairs on some of these things, but wouldn't you think you would see more drastic stuff from Franz? I mean, they're both good players, but it might be one of those things where I don't know if it's just a weird you got two brothers on the same team thing. It's a Lopez issue. It's a Markeith Morris, those kinds of things. But when I see Mo play in limited minutes, man, I like him better than Franz. I'll be honest. I'm picking him in my pickup game. So that's my Magic conspiracy theory to watch for the rest of the year. I'm not hearing anybody else talk about it, but look at the stats here. It's backing up what my eyes are telling me.
Yeah, when you bring up the minute disparity and the stats not being too far apart, I'm gonna have to look into that, but that is a very good point.
All right, Martin. Other thoughts on the standings here. So the Bucks, they've resurged a little bit from their earlier season struggles. Obviously, they've got a huge new piece in Damian Lillard to work in, and Dame talked about this a little bit last week, or maybe the last weekend, about, hey, listen, I'm not hitting consistently from deep. That's going to open up pick and roll play. That's going to open up stuff for other players. In spite of those things, look at where we are in the standings. I mean, we've got a lot to be proud of. So, I mean, they're only 5-5 on the road. They're taking care of home court. It's at 10-2, but it's one of those things where, I mean, there's been some clunkiness to it a little bit, for sure, but it'll sort itself out. I mean, again, it's about the postseason. You get your big stars for the postseason. Martin, the Sixers, obviously, you lose James Harden, but you get some filler pieces, right? And to kind of fluff some things out in that trade from the Clippers. They're holding at 14-7. Tyrese Maxey's taking a huge step. Again, just getting those shots that really Harden would have had. Joel's health is holding up for the time being. I still feel like they could use some front court depth, I think. Obviously we talked about them a little bit in the tournament, but the Pacers piece here too is, I mean, they've been really good. I mean, again, the Cavs' one loss in the in-season tournament was to the Pacers, and I mean, it like we didn't stand a chance the whole game. Like, there's Miles Turner was like on the trading block. Remember, we were going to throw in maybe a conditional first-round pick for the Lakers last year, was the rumor, to get him and Buddy Hield to fill out around LeBron. But I mean, they've been so impressive as a surprise this year.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the best things about the in-season tournament, because now it can emphasize some stars who, because of their market, don't get enough nationally televised games. And that star obviously being Tyrese Halliburton. Like, he has truly now burst onto the scene for a more casual NBA fan, and they've been talking about him on ESPN, Fox, all of that, because I mean, the guy's just been, he's averaging 20, basically 27 and 12 assists. I mean, he had like a 15 assist, zero turnover game in the tournament just a couple days ago. Like, the way that he's been playing in that Pacers team, like, their pace of play is so fast and fun to watch, which fans like watching. And it's crazy because, like, no one was really talking about him all like that last year. Now that people have seen him play and seen the Pacers play, we talked about the Magic being good. This almost feels like 2004 because the Pacers are good.
Yeah,
So that's what I think. Even though the Lakers obviously won the in-season tournament, Indiana was the biggest winner, and more Tyrese, because now his name is popped onto the national circuit.
I agree. Just eyeballing the standings here, if you look at fifth place with the Pacers through ninth place, you've got fractional margins. You've got the
Mhm.
Pacers at 12-8, Cavs at 13-9, Knicks and Nets at 12-9, Heat at 12-10, and then you dip a little bit with the Hawks. So there's a lot of folks that are really tight there in the standings, Martin. But I'm curious to see who is experiencing a kind of a false inflation based on how low of floor the bottom dwellers are in the East, with the Wizards and Pistons. Wizards at a paltry 3-18, the Pistons at 2-20, who just gave Alvin Gentry, or not Alvin Gentry, who just gave gosh darn it, what's his name? The coach from Toronto. Well, I looked that up because I'm embarrassed. A huge, massive deal with some
Dwayne
ownership.
Casey?
Yes. So it's, man, they've been bad, man, and especially with all the draft talent. Like, I thought Jaden Ivey was a huge get, and like it's bad right now. They're still giving minutes on the Pistons. They're still giving minutes to Killian Hayes. They're finally seeing James Wiseman ain't playing anymore. Marvin Bagley is still a name in the league. There's some bad stuff going on in Detroit, man. It's bad. And the Wizards too. I mean, I thought with Johnny Davis proved to be an awful draft pick out of Wisconsin, even though he was a heck of a college scorer. the guard position. Koulibaly, their draft pick this year. Again, when you're comparing to what the rest of the draft class looks like, you can only do so much. Denny Avdia's the Israeli swing man has definitely taken some strides this year too. But outside of that, it's Jordan Poole chucking and just not so great down there at the bottom of the standings. But I say all that to say that the bottom again is really bad. I think some of these teams are inflated. We'll have to see just who all I guess they are as we play out the rest of the season. But my only other surprise here, I think the Raptors will get back to a 500 team at some point. The Bulls just need to figure out who they're going to be and where they want to go because that roster is just so pedestrian. But the Hawks are really surprising to me, given the moves they've made, adding the depth. I got Bogdanovich back lately. They picked up Sadiq Bey at the trade deadline last year. They've been surprising that they're 3 games back at this point. And obviously, we'll end on the Cavs. But what are your East thoughts, or just kind of tangents you want to go on with, just how some of these things have played out?
Well, you already brought up Chicago. I mean, again, they need to figure out what they're going to do. I would also say, like, Charlotte, again, this is 20 some games in, so this stuff will change in the next 20 something games. But when LaMelo was playing, he was actually putting up some pretty monster numbers. Like, I was actually getting really impressed with him. He was 24, 5, and 8 right now. He's had a couple triple doubles, but I think that by the time we get post All-Star break, I would love Orlando to stay up there, but I think they'll slip a little bit, and then you'll have um the Bucks and Sixers and hopefully Cleveland get back to that top 4. But then the bottom is just like the Miami Heat will be at the bottom, and then they'll somehow just make it to the Eastern Conference Finals.
They'll find a way somehow. I mean, they've certainly been, plugging and playing in Heat culture like they normally do. I mean, they're very much built for doing a tournament like postseason like we do in the playoffs. So, Martin, one last night thing on the Pistons.
Hmm.
I forgot about this because I thought they broke it this week.
No,
Losers
they're still
19
losing. Yep.
in a row.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't think they haven't won what since October.
They were 2-1, then lost their next 19.
Oh yeah, it's bad. It's bad, man. It is. It is bad, and it's okay because the Spurs aren't not far behind them. They've lost 16 in a row.
Some tough times to be a lottery team, Martin.
Oh yeah.
But and speaking of happier times, one of my favorite days of the year, I know one of yours as well too, is amidst spending time with friends, family, opening gifts, and stuffing our faces with great Christmas or
Mhm.
um, whatever holiday you celebrate, festivities and feasts. We have Christmas Day games, as they're affectionately called by the NBA. We have Bucks at Knicks, followed by Warriors at Nuggets, Celtics at Lakers, 76ers at Heat, and Mavericks at Suns. Martin, give me maybe a matchup or two you're looking forward to. I think there's a couple in there that I'm kind of lukewarm on, but what are you looking forward to most of these matchups on Christmas Day?
They always put their best one at 5 p.m. So, and they put Lakers Celtics.
I would agree.
So they always do it. It's just because it's that perfect time. 5 p.m. people watching before they drive home to wherever or they're staying the night or whatever. I like that one. And then the second one I like at this current point in time is it's probably the last game, the Mavericks and Suns, because if all the horses are healthy, then I would like to see that track race. But it's really Celtics Lakers. Historic perspective, both teams are pretty good, and it's on 5 p.m. on Christmas.
I'm with you. Those have been the same two I would have picked. I always love watching a home New York Knicks game.
Which
When
they
things
always
are
get the 12 o'clock
they
time, no
always get to
matter
12
what.
o'clock, and I feel like they're always hosting too.
Yes, they
Almost
it's
like the
like
Detroit Lions on
it's
Thanksgiving.
They are the Lions of Thanksgiving of the NBA. They host the 12 p.m. game every year.
One of these days, Martin, the Cavs will be back on Christmas Day. I hope, I sincerely hope so. But yeah, the Celtics, the Lakers are going to be a good matchup to see the Lakers size versus, the Celtics, added new folks with Kristaps and Drew Holiday. They are obviously, in my opinion, they're a much deeper team. But obviously, that's the Lakers are nothing to sneeze at. So that'll be good there. Philly at Miami might be the next one. I'm just not too high on Golden State with where they stand right now against the Nuggets, and especially since the Nuggets just got back Jamal Murray. But yeah, that nightcap there too with, hey, let's get those three shining stars in the desert together. Let's get them all healthy. Let's roll the basketball out there and let's see what they do against, Luka and Kyrie and company. So
I do have it's interesting. I did when I saw the Warriors Nuggets, I think conspiracy theory is if Ja Morant didn't get suspended, they would have had Warriors versus Memphis because of that quote unquote rivalry they have between each other.
I think you're right.
And then they would have had the Sixers. I don't think they would have played the Heat. I think the Sixers would have played the Nuggets because of the back-to-back MVPs
I agree.
going at it. I think that's what they really would have done. And I also don't understand why if it's the Warriors Nuggets, I don't also understand why they didn't pick the Kings because the Kings and Warriors went seven
Yeah.
game series. Obviously, got to have Jokic, and you don't need the Heat on Christmas. I'm sorry, they should have made Jokic versus Embiid.
It should have been. That would have been definitely a better matchup. Some great storylines in there too. But I'm just trying to hope my Cavs get back someday to Christmas Day. I mean,
And
I
I'm
remember.
saying all this stuff, and I'm gonna watch every single game.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm just like, just if you're trying to get the most eyeballs on it.
Oh yeah, those two are the same ones I look at too. So, Martin, as we conclude here, obviously we got to spend some time talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Mhm.
Um, what have been your thoughts so far on the young Cavs season, 22 games in?
Obviously, I would have to look at our. I think we had them as a top four seed. I think we had them at four, somewhere around there. I know they were not six. We had them in the top four.
Yeah,
So currently they're six, so two away. The emergence of the Pacers has concerned me because that's another team that we would have to deal with. But I do not want, like, from a playoff perspective, because I think this team is good enough to make the playoffs. I don't want to be the sixth seed because obviously right now, I mean, oh yeah, I forget this is new playing seasons. I mean, playing all that stuff. I'm thinking of the old school stuff. We play Milwaukee. Yeah, the three plays the six, and I don't want that. Just saying. So I think that there's still a long way to go. And there was times where Donovan was out, and there were some games where I saw Garland do really well, and like watching, I'm just like, this isn't. I'm not getting the same vibe of that team that won what 50 games last year at the point in time as last year, but there is a long way to go.
there is. Just looking up and down. So the Cavs have only had two players play in all 22 games.
Yeah, that's not good.
That's Max Struess
He is a great pickup.
and he's no longer the minivan. The team is now calling him the G wagon, George Niang, and that dude is a wagon in his own right in terms of being kind of a force and a body contesting, shots in the paint and stuff and not letting, bigger folks back him down. And he's a heck of a trash talker, man. I didn't realize that about him before. I mean, he is a trash talker. But so that looks at, Karis LeVert has missed 6 games. Evan Mobley is going to miss his second game coming up. He had played in 21 games. And Darius and Donnie had each missed 5 apiece. So, I
Yeah.
mean, you're looking at times you've had, it's still limited the amount of time you've had your full starting lineup together.
Hmm.
With that being said, so some bright spots. Yeah, Max Struess has been insane. I mean, he is, you can put him down for at minimum like 10, 4, and 4 a night he's averaging 14, 4 point or 14, 5.5 boards and 4 assists. Where I really see him shining on the rebounding side of things is like when we go up and we play a longer team like in Orlando, or we're playing Joel Embiid or something like that. You've got all those folks contesting shots in there, and those balls that kind of like the longer rebound stuff, he is flying in there to grab stuff. I mean, and he's given a great effort on the defensive end. He's knocking down 3-pointers like we need him to. This is sorely what this team needs. I love Max Strus on the Cleveland Cavaliers. Outside of that, he's had played in 17 appearances. For a guy that I thought was washed up, I've really liked the pickup of Tristan Thompson. He is not the Tristan Thompson of old, that played for the Cavs for so many years, won a title with us. His foot speed is slower. He's in terms of he was so famous for being able to, all right, somebody picked him out in a pick and roll. He is defending somebody at the 3-point arc or shortly inside a smaller guy, and he would contest phenomenally. Like all the things we're seeing out of Mobley right now, he would be phenomenal at that. But Tristan has been a great, when the game's getting muddy, you'll see JB just stick Tristan in, and Tristan is one of the best at playing the game muddy. And for a team that was sorely out rebounded, by the Knicks and Robinson and all those folks, he's a big body to deal with under there. And I can't remember what the game was recently. We played in where we sorely needed a turn and the game was getting super muddy. And we put in Tristan, and I mean, he was like plus 11 in 6 minutes or something. I mean, just offensive rebounds and just, contesting in the paint. He's great. He's a great backup big. I mean, for us, he really has so far in the kind of system that we need him to play in. So that's been really impressive. Darius has definitely had a little bit better. He had a huge hamstring injury to start the year. He's definitely had a better role of it of late. Donnie's last couple of games have been pretty good, but there were some clunkers in there, man, that were bad. Like, so, I went to the Cavs game against the Heat right before Thanksgiving at home. So Cavs beat the Heat the other night, but that was like the worst performance of the season. It was so bad. Kyle Lowry hit, I think, 5 or 6 threes in the first half. I think 5 of those were in the first quarter. Team looked just disinterested. They didn't have Bam for that game either. It just was a sad state of affairs. And I mean, just team didn't have it that night. But I think Evan's points are about where they were last year. He's creeping up a little bit. Again, a lot of the national folks who don't watch him day in and out will say, well, he's not taking 7-foot jumpers. Well, it's not necessarily our offense, and we're asking him to do some ISO like that. The big to big passing, from the foul line down between him and Allen has been good. And he gets a lot of good spots in the dunker spot. Every once in a while, you'll see him kind of push the pace with the ball, almost like a Draymond Green, and bring it up full court from a rebound, and he'll get maybe gets a basket out of that. But I like the addition of George Niang too. Craig Porter is a guy to watch. Undrafted Wichita State, led Wichita State in points, rebounds, blocks, and assists last year. Undrafted, Cavs were thrilled to pick him up. He has been great, averaging 7 points, 2 assists a game, coming in for a guy that we just kind of took a flyer on a 2-way deal. So I mean, he's definitely a candidate for maybe getting his contract converted. But I say all that to say, Martin, you're exactly right. We're still early on. We're not in a spot with the Cavs where we need to hit the panic button. We're not in a spot where we're saying, oh my gosh, this is the team of last year and better. It's towards the lower end probably of what it's expected of them, but we've got to play a lot more games.
Yeah, and I would also say with the Cavs too, I mean, since there was no games today, NBA games, and they're all back tomorrow, and how they're at Orlando tomorrow, which again, we need to beat these type of teams. But then they have Boston 2 nights in a row, and I don't remember the last time that's happened. They have them on the 12th, then take a break, and on the 14th, both at TD Garden. So that's weird, but
one of those baseball schedule things.
But that's 3 games where these are teams in the Eastern Conference who have a leg up on you, so you need to get those wins. So Stiff competition to start.
Martin, let's cap off with you teased this a little bit earlier. So this is our first full season
Hmm.
as NBA fans, or the NBA's really embraced as loudly as they have, the sports betting scene opening up
Yes.
in so many more states. Um, where do you think that's added to the game, to the culture of already? I mean, people love the NBA. Um, what are your thoughts so far as so it was open in the state of Ohio January 1.
Hmm.
So we're just coming up on a year of sports betting in Ohio.
Yep.
What are your thoughts, and then specifically as it relates to basketball?
From personal experience with some of our own friends, it's added them watching more NBA regular season games because they're betting on these games. They have friends who, some of our friends who have never watched games even until Christmas and the playoffs, but they're getting on League Pass watching games because of sports betting. It also, with sports betting, to me, depending on how deep you get into it, it helps you learn about other players in the league besides like a LeBron or Durant, like Tyrese Halliburton. Like you just be like, why should I bet this guy to get a double double? Then you watch him play and you're like, oh my gosh, this guy is crazy. So I think it's open eyes to other players in the league, and it gets more buzz about it. It won't ever be the NFL because the NFL is king in North America, but the NFL had its own gambling before gambling became legal with fantasy football. Obviously, that's technically betting. You're putting money in your pots and all of that. And now with sports betting, I just think that more eyes are on the product. And the NBA is embracing that, doing over and unders and on these sites. Charles Barkley and all these other analysts are making parlays that people could follow, like Rachel Nichols, JJ Redick. Like I just think it has more people interested in the product, and that's what NBA management wants.
I'll do my quick PSA and our L7C disclaimer. Of course, never, ladies and gentlemen listening, never gamble with more than what you're
Yes.
able to lose. Do it responsibly. I would encourage you to, if you're going to do something, make it small, to have skin in the game. Where you're not, having an issue here or there with stuff. Do a 25-cent bet with 12 legs that might net you $5. Do those kinds of things, but yeah, don't get super crazy out there for those around you and for your personal savings in this volatile market with inflationary spending. I'm sure you can allocate a lot of those dollars elsewhere, but also get folks, wanting to have a little bit of break from, the craziness, the sprint of the day. Just have something they can unplug with and have a vested interest in a random Tuesday night's Portland Trail Blazers and Denver Nuggets game.
Hmm.
So, with that being said, yes, I too have noticed folks that normally wouldn't talk about basketball, and no, I'm a huge fan, ask me, hey, what can you tell me about player X, or what about this team, or like who's good on this team. It's drawing in more eyeballs. I think you hit the nail on the head on, hey, how much of this influx of viewership can be tied to, obviously it's tough to quantify, but I think that's absolutely a huge piece of why ratings are up, is just how much the NBA is particularly embrace this. How many ESPN and Fox Sports shows are there now where before you get your 7 o'clock slate of games on is an NBA odds game with talking heads saying, I really like Darius Garland for
Hmm.
15 points and 8 assists tonight. In his last three matchups against Team X, he's averaged 7 assists, 9 assists, 11 assists. So I think he can get 8. Like that, it's got its own little ecosystem and sub economy to it too. With all these folks that like, hey, these kind of shows weren't making programming and people didn't care about them. Podcast industry too, people talking over unders and money line and spreads and all those types of things. I mean, there's a little bit of a dehumanization. We've grown to become accustomed with fantasy football,
Hmm.
with gambling with NFL players, right? Of like, oh, player X, he didn't make the goal line, or, threw two picks, or like, and then there's angry people. Get out of athletes' DMs. Their job's already in their own right stressful enough, where there's life, or just their livelihoods are on the line every week. How they perform, and you're bashing them for not getting you two extra fantasy points for, office bragging rights. But I think, particularly for the NBA standpoint, there's always going to be a little brother to the NFL. I think it's definitely been a shot in the arm in terms of increasing viewership, in terms of, folks seeking out opportunities to watch a great game of basketball, which we love so dearly.
Yeah, and it gives people like opportunity to like study it on their own. Like, oh, if I think X is gonna do well, but I need to look who's gonna guard so and so. What's this team? What has he done historically against this team? Like, is it a rest day? Things like that, and it's making you look more into the NBA stuff, which is always a good thing, and that's what Silver wants because he spoke about it when they put those policies, man. Like load management's really crippled the fan perspective. Like it's just like, why do I want to come to these games if my favorite player is going to sit out and they're still working on that? But now with betting, it's like it gives them some interest they may not have, and that's only going to continue to grow because these leagues, NBA, NFL, all that, they're getting into bed with Vegas and all of that. So, and they're getting to bed with all these DraftKings and their official partners. So it's just only going to grow from here on out.
It's been a successful start, Martin. I'm excited to see kind of that next leg here as we get into the Christmas Day games later on this month, and we turn the calendar over to January, and eventually trade deadline in February-ish, and All-Star game, and we'll keep cycling through all the ups and downs of the NBA season as always.
Yeah, we're going to have all-star snubs. We may have some crazy trades coming because there are teams who need to make a move when it gets to the deadline, and there are going to be some all-star snubs because there always is. But I think the NBA with the in-season tournament is now they have a couple weeks till Christmas, and then people will be excited for those games, and then keeping that momentum going. But I think they're in a good place right now. And with that being said, thank you everyone for listening to the L7C podcast. Make sure you like, rate, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you think in the comments or in the polls down below. Did you like the in-season tournament? I'll post those polls. You can get those in the comments. What would you change about it? Would you keep it the same time? Would you make it longer, shorter? Just let us know because it's the first one ever. And I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. So you got to let us know what it is. That being said, L7C Podcast signing out. Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C Podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.